So thank you everybody for joining us on a Friday afternoon. I know that there's better things to do on a Friday afternoon after a full week of work. So I appreciate your time and I hope this is well worth it. So today we're going to talk about a process or a story about how we've been able to kind of scale an MVP that we created for our customers at USDA. And let me go through the agenda real quick. First, we're kind of going to talk about who we are and a little bit about the project. But before we get going, I just wanted to mention that this isn't going to be a traditional kind of how-to UX talk, but more of a high-level process-oriented and strategy type talk mixed with a nice demo in the end so you can see the actual product. And we wanted to share a story in case, it helps you get ideas on how you might be able to scale MVPs in your work in the federal space. And we thought that even though our circumstances might not be identical to yours, this still may be a good story to tell with some good takeaways that may be relevant to everyone.
Is Ashley on?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so with that, I wanted to give Ashley Miller, our former product owner, the opportunity to introduce the project and what we'll be talking about.
Thanks, Eva. I am trying to get my video to actually go. All right, there we are. Hi, I'm Ashley Miller. I work at USDA and am the former product owner for farmers.gov. Farmers.gov was launched in 2018 to provide user-friendly resources for farmers to help them navigate complicated policy and programs available from USDA. One of the digital stepper tools, the disaster assistance tool, took over 2 years to go from being a minimally viable product to the fully functional feature that's on the website now. Through prioritization, planning sessions, and careful user experience considerations, the disaster assistance tool has become one of the most used tools on farmers.gov and has set a standard for stepper tools at USDA. Really needs no introduction, but I'd like to introduce ihutson, the principal UX architect, and Jason Glisson, the former lead Drupal developer, to explain the process of how we got this tool to where it is today.
Thank you, Ashley. We really appreciate your partnership and your willingness to be here today with us. Yeah, so we'll be going through the agenda as it is laid out. First, I want to kind of talk about the historical context in a little bit more detail than what Ashley went through, because I think it's important to understand the context in order to interpret this story. Then we'll go into some details about the inception of the project and the MVP, or the minimum viable product, and the process of scaling it. And then we should be good. And then, of course, demo it afterwards. I'm gonna quickly do introductions since I feel like 3 times is too many introductions. But I'm Eva Hudson, Principal UX Architect. I've been working with Jason on this project for the last 2+ years. We got hired on the same day to work on farmers.gov, and this has been an extremely productive and fun partnership that we're both really proud of our work. So this is very exciting that we get to present together. And Jason, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jason. Yeah, it's been a learning experience. Eva and I we have literally sat there and gone through lines of code manually and done things like taking out commas and just crazy things while we've been working on the disaster tool. But it's in like a fantastic place now, which is why we're giving this talk. So hopefully you enjoy it.
Okay, quick disclaimer. This presentation is not an official endorsement of MetroStar systems by the United States Department of Agriculture. And let's go into the actual historical context. We have a lot to cover, so I'm going to sort of skip through the areas that Ashley already mentioned to make best use of our time. So the project is a high visibility project on the President's management agenda. It is led by Secretary Perdue, who had the vision to create the best customer service in the federal government. He's invested in efficiencies and customer service, one of which being a digital service that enhances the in-person experience of American producers when they go into their actual service centers. And in order to deliver on this vision, USDA has created a digital platform comprised of two main parts. The first part is a Drupal unauthenticated site, which is what we'll be talking about today. And the second part is a Salesforce authenticated environment, or also known as the transactional portal, where producers can do business in a safe, authenticated environment with USDA. The mission, as Ashley mentioned, is to build a dynamic, online, customer-driven, mobile-friendly website that delivers information, tools, and firsthand advice built around the needs of the people who grow our food, fiber, flora, and fuel. So this is a very noble and very rewarding project to have the opportunity to work on. So a little bit about the history of what the agile development world looked like in 2018 when we started this project. It was driven by the Secretary's vision, as I mentioned, and there were a lot of new changes going on at USDA at the time. There was the overall digital modernization effort across the agency. There were new customer service centers of excellence that were being spun and kind of integrated within USDA. There was the concept that the work done on farmers.gov will be positioned as the IT model for the agency at large. So there was a lot of visibility in the project. Additionally, there was a new agile development framework being implemented at the time, which was Agile Safe for specifically for farmers.gov, because it is a very large project. And then in order to address the new framework of agile development, there were also some reorganization and reskillings and trainings going on within USDA. And last but not least, there was the push to adopt human-centered design principles. So with that, all of this going on, you can imagine that people who worked at USDA or with USDA had a lot going on and a lot of new and exciting things. For the purposes of this talk, I would like to dig in a little bit deeper in the safe agile side of things as it relates to how prioritization works on the farmers.gov team. So in order to kind of make the case to enhance an existing MVP, that work has to be prioritized next to pressing new work and addressing new policies or new timely issues that the agency is working on. The train consists of about 120 people, and we all plan together to ensure that we're in coordination with each other and that our work serves the best customer experience that we can provide to our end user. In every PI or program increment, which is a 10-week chunk of time, we plan our work in 10-week program increments. And in that planning, we also have to plan for ad hoc requests, or essentially plan for things we don't fully understand while we're planning, because, for example, nobody can predict things like disaster events and how they may impact producers. So we can't plan for what may happen because it's just not possible. But we do have to prioritize things with that in mind. So time boxing and building an iteration of an existing MVP and allocating those resources is a logistically very complicated process for our product owners and our business owners. And that plays a role in the timeline of scaling MVPs. So let's talk a little bit about what actually the MVP looked like. First, I want to kind of define how MetroStar thinks about an MVP and how we've kind of socialized the idea of an MVP. I'm sure you've seen versions of this graph on the internet. There's 100 of them, but this is our flavor of it. So every feature that we put out, we wanted to not just be something functional, but we wanted to be also usable and engaging, or like a small version of a larger feature, but that has like components that we want to test, because the purpose of the MVP is to test an idea, and we want to do that with more than just functionality. So that means we paid attention to UI, content, usability, in addition to functionality. So the idea for the tool came from pain points that were collected before my team started. Our product owner at the time shared detailed personas with us that described the needs and circumstances of our audience. The data was collected across the country, so it was representative. And while reviewing that data, it was clear to us that there were some pain points around being able to quickly orient yourself once you're in the context of needing disaster assistance, because again, disasters strike and nobody can plan for that. So under pressure and under stress, people need to be able to navigate the complicated environment that is, federal policy. So we had also input from USDA employees who are part of the producer community themselves, who supported the idea and promoted the idea of creating the tool. So the initial concept was to develop an easy to use mobile-friendly stepper tool that guides the producers through the process of finding a program that matches their needs. The full product vision was to build reusable code that can be editable through Drupal so that it could stay up to date with fast-moving policy, as well as share the code with other agencies or other internal to USDA groups that may want to reuse it for their needs. And to create the MVP, we had 2 months. And as a new team on a new contract, we were aiming to create something that is not just functional, but also a mix of usable and engaging. And we wanted to create something that's simple enough, but not too simple. So we wanted to be very careful about interpreting the policy well enough in a short timeline. So we first started by defining our use cases and our scenarios of when people will need to use this tool to find disaster assistance information. I know this is really tiny, but just wanted to showcase that we had to build in so we read through all the policies around 10 different disaster assistance programs, and we sort of carefully inventoried and documented everything we were learning about those policies and what kind of qualifying events and commodities are there for each of the 10 programs. And then we were still building our subject matter expertise at the time. So as I said, we worked closely with USDA partners to interpret the policy properly. And so we ended up with a 5-step tool that asked the users for the year when a disaster occurred, what disaster was it, what commodity did it impact, and in what county and state was the disaster. So based on this information, we were able to create a logic that matches them with a specific program. So as you can see, there's different answers here. This is a list of disasters, and this is a list of commodities. And based on how they match up, you end up with content specific to your needs. The next step was to collect detailed content and assets and create the interactive prototype, which helps us put the entire flow in context. And we also were able to quickly test it with USDA staff who are also producers, so their feedback was really relevant to us. And then at the end, we applied, the visual look and feel. Again, this is very tiny, but you get the idea. We had an actual wireframe that was interactive, and we were able to test with it. One thing we knew when we were working on the MVP is that we'll need a way to actually show the adoption rates and value of this tool in order to scale it later on, because we knew that there's a lot more we can do with this than what we were able to get done within 2 months. So because we were in the process of getting a PRA approval at the time to systematically collect user research, we weren't able to do qualitative in-depth studies. But what we were able to do is set up methods of passive data collection over time through using Google Tag Manager and Hotjar as well as a open feedback widget, which is right here, where people can type literally whatever they want. It's just a form field that asks them to give us any feedback they may have. And we also created a binary feedback feature. We got the idea from Google. Google uses this a lot on their content, which is a very simple way to assess utility. Like, was this helpful, yes or no, in general. So we set all these evaluation strategies ahead of time in order to help us later kind of show evidence for utility and adoption of the tool, and consequently to get the time to scale it. After this, we were able to launch our MVP on production in June of 2018. While it was a fully functional on the front end side of things tool, the tool is not set up so that content creators on the USDA side can edit content or update policies or update anything that needs updating. Everything had to be a push to production, which creates a bottleneck. And also the code was not reusable or shareable, which was part of the initial vision. So next we'll go over the incremental small changes made before the major rebuild, and then demo the tool. I want to go through sort of the process of how we scaled it. So after the MVP was live, we knew that not rebuilding it will eventually lead to a lot of design and technical debt, to the point where that would actually hurt the end user's experience and the utility of the tool. The tool was online and working, so in a way it was kind of our success that made it difficult to make the case for investing and improving it, because on the front end the tool was working fine, but not being able to scale it was going to be eventually a problem that we knew existed. So we kept collecting and presenting data about the tool as one of the most visited features on the website. The way we did that was by using Google Data Studio findings and recommendation reports. We have reports every PI that talk about the overall health of the website, but we also have feature-based reports that detail all the data that Google Tag Manager collects about behavior use, and generally how the tool is being adopted. We also have Google Data Studio reports from the feedback widget, the qualitative data that I mentioned. So our customers or our clients at USDA have access to read through that feedback specific to the disaster tool at any point. It's up to date constantly, which is the kind of the beauty of Google Data Studios. If you haven't used it, I strongly recommend it. We also used Hotjar heat maps and scroll depth, clicks, and mouse movement maps to get more in-depth detail about what areas are people paying attention to and what they're interacting with. This is a quick kind of screenshot of the data that we're collecting. So on the left side, you can see the events that Google Tag Manager collects on the first input of the tool. So where people are answering the question, when did the disaster occur? You can see this is since inception, but you can essentially drill down and see what are popular times of year when this tool is being used, or when have events occurred that are leading people to need this tool. So this is just one example of an event that we're tracking, but we're tracking a lot more. And then on the right, you can see the Hotjar heat map of mouse movement. So we can see where people's cursors are and what they're kind of considering in their interactions. The Data Studio report data in combination with other factors eventually led to the prioritization of a complete rebuild of the tool. Implementing a new design system on the production site was one of the kind of factors that played into it. Because we were pushing a new design system across the site, that meant that if we don't fix the backend now, then we'll have to redo the same front end work in the future when we do get time to do the backend. So we knew that fixing the backend in combination with the front end is the most efficient way to do this. Our process has also drastically improved since 2018. So planning and prioritizing is more efficient and more mature. So we're able to have more mature conversations with our customers. And as a group in general, we're making larger, more efficient strides towards great software development and great customer experience. Another reason is obviously there has been no shortage of natural disasters this year, so this tool is as relevant as ever. Additionally, because of COVID-19, the service centers have been closed, so the in-person engagements that farmers have with USDA are no longer there. So online information is absolutely critical, and keeping it up to date is absolutely critical as well. So the last thing I'm going to mention is we've been also working on improving the overall load time on the website incrementally, because that is a key point to making the site accessible to rural America, because they don't always have great broadband, and the load times in rural areas can be upwards of like 10, 11 seconds, which is absolutely wild. So we really try to be very mindful and careful about load time. So rebuilding the tool, one of the benefits of that was also to improve the load time of the MVP. And with that, I will pass it over to Jason. Jason, do you want to share a screen, or do you want me to run the slides?
You can just go to the next slide, and then I'll
Okay.
share my screen when I do the demo. So this originally was supposed to have been 2 separate talks, but we kind of meshed them together. So this is really going to dive into some of the development part of this. And I'll try to breeze through this timeline quickly so I can show off the tool. Some things that I wanted to highlight, mid-March, which is when Eva and I started, that's when the USDA policy was really being outlined for the tool. My first day on the job was actually at USDA in a room of about 50 people talking about policy and showing the actual flow chart for how this would work. And the flow chart was about 4 feet by 2 feet and very, very tiny. So there was lots of policy involved in this. And then much later, when Eva started working on the prototype, which was late May, I think, is when we actually finished the prototype, she handed me the logic flow that she had come up with, and I haven't really slept well since. I don't know if I'd worked on anything that had that much logic in it before, so that it was kind of daunting at first. Meanwhile, the Farmers team is actually working on a lot of other stuff. We launched our new farmers.gov site in June. And then after it launched, we found out from USDA that we actually needed to support some older versions of IE, since that was what most of their staff was using. And we had some metrics that other people, producers and farmers, were using it as well. So we had to roll back some of the JS from ES6 to ES5. Which we ended up doing pretty quickly, actually. Let's see, it was about March 2019 that we started understanding, okay, most everything in the site as far as the disaster tool was hard coded in a Drupal module that we just essentially turned on. And that was really because we had no time to fully develop it, or really even think through how to develop it with the UI part of Drupal integrated into it. So it was already kind of a problem. We knew we were going to have to eventually figure out how to fix that. The last real commit of code for the old disaster tool was April 12th, 2019, where we made the year dynamic. So whatever year it is, it loads that year into the drop down automatically. And so there was a year, it was a year exactly, which is strange, but it was a year exactly when we started working on the new disaster tool. And in that year span, we actually launched several other tools. We did some work on the design system. We launched the farm loan tool, the H2A tool, and some other interactive tools if you want to go to the farmer site and check those out. So then from April 12th up to June, we were working on paragraph types and field types, kind of ironing out how we wanted to launch this tool in production. And since our team, I don't know if anyone on this session was on our talk yesterday, but Matt Calvert and I did a session on kind of how we launched this tool. And we do an update script, which I'll talk a little bit about if we have time. So July 1st through the 31st, it was nothing but testing. And then finally at the end of July on the 31st, we launched it to production. And so this kind of shows how the module is structured. We have a custom Drupal module that we wrote, and inside that module, we have an update script that literally all of the content, that means programs, the years that those programs are active, PDFs, images, anything that is in the tool is in that update script. So when the update script runs, it is creating all of that in Drupal. It's creating the fields, it's creating the paragraphs, it's putting the paragraphs in the page. And then all of that, we're really just using the page for the backend UI to manage everything in the tool. All of that data flows through a custom REST API that we created. And it's actually just running from the module. This isn't like a services API that you can run in Drupal. This is a custom API that we wrote into the module itself. And all of that data just flows into the Vue application that we have that basically generates the tool in the front end. And then we have our farmer's design system that is kind of sitting at the theme level, that it really is just responsible for making the tool look like it does. And I guess, is it demo time? Do I have time to do the demo? I have time to do the demo, right? Let's see.
Yeah, you have time.
Yes.
Oh, I'm going.
I need to stop sharing. You need to start sharing.
Yep, here we go. Okay, you guys see that? Okay. How's that?
Looks good.
Okay, great. So this is the new disaster tool, and it's running Vue.js on the front end, and this just launched in July. So I'm just gonna kind of breeze through this real quick, and I'll highlight some of the features. This year select also is manageable on the back end, but it's pretty much dynamic. It will add another year as the tool ages. But you can actually pick the years that you want to pair with programs on the back end. And I'll just pick some things here that I know are actual disasters right now. And let's try.
Can you narrate what you're doing? Like you're picking disasters?
Yeah. So I'm going pretty fast.
I know we've done this a million times.
Yeah, so I've tested this tool so many times. So I did pick disasters, and then I picked the crops that were, I can just go backwards. I picked the crops that were affected, crops or livestock or commodities that were affected by the disasters that I selected. And then you select where this occurred. So I'm gonna, I'll pick where I'm from. Oop, that is not where I'm from. Here we go. And then you hit see results. So you have, it outputs essentially what you've selected. And then it has all of the various disaster programs for supporting these that you selected. And you can click on those to find out more about each one of these programs. And then we have this nice section. This is also editable on the back end. Prepare for your service center visit. And this is dynamic as well. This changes depending on what programs you have gotten in your results. And then we have the service center locator at the bottom, which we also just rebuilt and launched the new one, I believe, earlier this year or late last year. I can't remember now. So this will tell you where you should go, which is a great feature. Then we have the binary feedback area that Eva mentioned. We have print results, and then you can start over. So let's see here. I'll show this just real quick. This is the design system that is really responsible for most of the look and feel. Some of the elements in the tool are come from the module, but for the most part, a lot of the individual UI components are from this design system. I'll show the checkboxes because this is one of the more familiar things in the tool. We have this kind of checkbox layout that is in our design system. And this is kind of a living design system. You can check it out. I'll have a link to it in one of the other slides here. And then from our talk yesterday, this is the update script that we ran. This is just an example. This isn't the actual one. But if you're interested in kind of launching a lot of content really quickly, this is a great way to do it. And this is the shortened URL for that if you're interested. But overall, it was really successful build. I think it was engineered really well. And a lot of the developers maybe on this talk that helped with it. So thank you for your help and your hard work on developing it too. I think we can go back to the slideshow now.
Okay, I'll start sharing my screen again. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, so there's the design system URL if you're interested in looking at that. So a couple of things that I want to just highlight quickly is that everything in the tool is now editable in Drupal, which is a big accomplishment. We also tested adding new programs because there will be new programs, and I know Denise is on our session here. She was very, very instrumental in QAing this whole tool. And one thing that she wanted to make sure we were able to do is add new programs as the tool ages. It's going to need new programs, so she was able to confirm that that works, and that was a big deal because we wanted that capability. You can add disasters, crops, livestock, commodities, all that can be done in CMS. One of the bigger things that Eva mentioned was having the tool load faster. And originally this tool was just a very, very long page, and we were using JavaScript to show and hide things based on what people were selecting on screen. And that wasn't ideal. So we actually have a Vue app running this now. So we're really only loading things that we need. And that was very important for low bandwidth areas and rural areas mainly, because that's kind of, those are the people that are using this site. And so we wanted to keep that in mind. And then lastly, it's easy to update very time sensitive information. If there's a policy change, if there's copy that needs to be changed immediately, we can jump in and we can change it on the back end without having to do a code push, whereas before everything had to be changed with a code push. So that was a big accomplishment as well. From the design from the disaster tool, as far as the design system, that has all been adopted into the H2A checklist tool, the farm loans tool, and the CFAP tool that, that actually just launched. And we've had some external groups also communicate with us about how we've built this tool and how we've managed our design system. So FEMA has contacted us, and we've had some great discussions with US Digital Services as well.
Yeah, and just to add to that, they've been interested in reusing our code, which is now possible. Our code is absolutely reusable and scalable. So we're very excited to partner with any agencies who may want to use the same model in the future. Okay, so to sum up, what did we learn today? If you don't remember anything from this talk, I'm hoping that you remember some of these points on this slide. In order to be successful in any IT environment, but specifically in government, it's important to understand the organizational context in which we're working and the digital maturity of the clients that we're working with, and consider that when making recommendations. So if we, in the beginning of the changes the USDA was going through, went in and were like, no, we're doing this the right way, and we're not going to delay, and we kind of were like purist about following precise agile methodologies, this wasn't going to be as successful as it is now. And there's no way, to do it otherwise. So it's really important to understand that organizational context. It's also important to collect behavioral data that supports your arguments for value. Without knowing that something is successfyour on an objective level, there's no really good way to make succinct and evidence-based argumentation to make your case that your customer should invest in something. Also, be a good partner. Educate and empathize with your clients. World people, they go through, everybody goes through different, work changes or whatever it may be. So again, as a good designer or a good developer, just be a good partner. It's important to grow in lockstep with your clients as well. As I mentioned, it's super important to be gritty, be patient, and persistent. As designers, specifically, we like to say, we're fighting the good fight. We're helping people every day, and working with the federal government provides an opportunity to do that at scale. So just keep doing the right thing and keep fighting the good fight. And remember that lasting change happens one step at a time, not overnight. And that sometimes scaling an MVP can be a marathon and not a sprint. And with that, we'll go into questions. And I'd like to use this time briefly to thank my entire team at farmers.gov. Jason and I have been really fortunate to work with some exceptional people.
Absolutely.
Hannah, Eunice, Brittany, I'm just going to name the design team, Steve, Matt, Denise, Michelle. I'm probably missing somebody, apologies, but everybody that's been involved has been absolutely exceptional. And I feel very fortunate that we're on this train together.
Yep, couldn't have said it better. Yep.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, any questions, comments, insults?
I just think it was great how you actually took into account the users who were using the website. A lot of developers don't, when you're thinking about creating a solution for clients and the technologies that they're using and their bandwidth,
Right.
you usually
Yeah.
don't take account of that. And I think that was smart. And actually, I took note of that. And also Google Data Studio. I was like, oh.
Yeah,
I've used tags
and
analytics, of course, but
as far as the bandwidth thing, that was something that most developers, I think, we don't really think about. We all live kind of in the age of high-speed internet, but there are rural areas that still have dial-up, and some of these people have such terrible connections. They're not actually connected at all until they really need to be. So that was something that we try to be mindful of, even with the entire site, really.
Awesome. Any questions? Well, I enjoyed your presentation. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to Ashley Miller for introducing us.
Absolutely. Yes.
Happy to help.